Members, it is the appointed time for the meeting and we have a quorum. Let me call the meeting to order. Item 1, confirmation of minutes. Minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of May 2018 has been sent to members. The clerk has not received any proposed amendments. Can members please confirm the minutes? Item 2, information paper issued since the last meeting. Since the last meeting, the clerk sent out one information paper to members, and the details are in the agenda sent on the 9th of July 2018. If there are no questions, let's go to item 3. Progress of the major initiatives under the new agriculture policy. Yes? Yes? I heard Ms. Tanya Chan's voice. Mr. Eddie Chu. Chairman, I'd like to ask whether this is the last meeting of this panel. Well, theoretically, yes. Theoretically, yes. Since today we are going to discuss the new agriculture policy and the agricultural park is an important topic, we'll be mentioning that. Well, yes, if I like to ask for a public hearing to be held, well, I will talk about that in a moment. I haven't come to your agenda item. I have to come to item 3 when we talk about the NAP, then we'll take on board your views. And of course, if you have other views, please do advance those views. Today we can't extend the meeting. Please make the best use of the meeting time. The Secretariat has prepared a background brief for members. You should have it. And also the clerk has received a letter and also 4 submissions from the letter was from Mr. Eddie Chu and 4 submissions, and they have been tabled. Mr. Eddie Chu, you mentioned the public hearing. Even if you don't say it, I would like to conduct one, but I have to see whether we can find a venue and also that we are going into the summer recess. We'll take it up together with the clerk and the administration to see when we can find the time, the venue, and whether we can gather enough members. All right, if there are no other questions, I'll ask the Secretary to take us through the paper. Thank you, Chairman. This is the last meeting of the panel before the summer recess. Well, the Chairman said that's in theory. First, I'd like to thank the Chairman and members for supporting our work in the past year. And also, members have given us a lot of valuable views on many topics relating to food safety and environmental hygiene, and you have supported many of our proposals. The FH Bureau's major initiative is to implement the new agriculture policy to modernize our agriculture industry and also to have sustainable development of local agriculture. The important initiatives are to set up the agricultural park, to designate priority areas, and also to set up the fund and also to go for high value added development. The progress of the various measures has been given in the paper, and I won't go into all the details. I'd just like to point out that the agri-park will be an important infrastructure for Hong Kong's agriculture industry. It will help to modernize the industry and also enhance its competitiveness. It can also revitalize fallow farmland. In order to complement the long-term development of the agri-park, we need a complement of measures to provide logistics services and transport. Say, for example, we need to build new carriageways and footpaths to make sure that there will be enough farmland as well as sources of irrigation water. In planning for agri-park, we have maintained liaison with stakeholders to listen to them, and we have explained to the public the various arrangements of the park. In the new legislative session, we expect to apply for capital works funding from the Legislative Council, and we hope members will support us. If members have any questions on the NAP, my team and I would be very happy to answer them. Thank you. For the moment, I have 6 members, including myself, going to ask questions. Who else would like to ask a question? If not, we can discuss the item until 3:30. Let me say we have 4 minutes for each member, and I'll see whether we can have a second round as we go along. Ms. Tanya Chan. The order will be Tanya Chan, Ann Chang, Pun Xiu Ping, Leung Yu Chung, Eddie Chu, Kwok Wai Keung, and myself. Tanya Chan. Thank you, Chairman. As you said, as Mr. Eddie Chu said, The agri-park seems to be the focus of the new policy. The administration is saying that we have 700 hectares of land of active farming, and the agri-park is only about 80 hectares in size. But the first phase is going to make an impact on residents, and it seems private developers are acquiring land. So the rent for land designated for phase 2 is also shooting up. I'd like to ask what measures you have to support the villagers, and if in case the villagers are evicted, how will you make arrangements for in situ rehousing?
I hope the administration can provide a conclusive answer. Since you're undertaking such a huge project, and after learning so many lessons or experience, and you couldn't come up with better solutions to accommodate the residents. Secretary, on the issue of relocation, thanks for Ms. Chan's question. And firstly, on one hand, when we're implementing the NAP, we outline our goals. We hope to modernize the agriculture and to revitalize the agricultural sector. However, for the phase 1 of the agri-park, we hope to provide roads and water sources for irrigation, so for such kind of infrastructure. So we understand there will be some impact. Besides previously, before and after the Gazettal, the AFCD colleagues have been communicating with them and explained our policy and listened to their views on the next step and explained to them what is supporting infrastructure. And we, like Ms. Chen said, we are carried by the situation after relocation. So the aim of what we've done is to hope to improve the agricultural developments. So under this premises, upon completion, we hope that the farmers can be able to resume farming. So I'll defer to FCD to supplement on the subsequent arrangements. Any follow-up questions, Ms. Chan? Thank you, Chairman. As for the scope of the agri-park, besides the active agriculture farmland, it also include fallow farmland. So by our preliminary estimate, that phase 1, the affected number of farmers will be about a dozen. We has undertaken that the affected farmers, if they agree to our conditions in the agri-park, there we have a priority to operate in the agri-park. In this connection, the FCD is currently collecting records on farms operations, so to give us the picture as to which are the farmers are doing actual farming in the agri-park area. So we shall use this information on the vetting of applications into agri-park to differentiate the farmers in the area and the others. Next, Ms. Dr. N. Chang. Thank you, Chairman. So now I saw for the Sustainable Agricultural Development Fund, SADF, now you spent over 200 million. So the phase 1 of the agri-park haven't even started. Would you consider injecting funds into the SADF? So I heard from the Secretary that you hope the members will support for the funding request. So will you plan to put the additional amount into the SADF? So can you clarify, Secretary? I said that I hope the members will support the funding requests for the phase 1 of the capital works proposal on roads And at the next legislative session, we'll go to the PWSC and the FC and hope the members will support that. For the SADFs mentioned by Dr. N. Chang, that is one of the key elements of our NAP. Would hope to support the farmers to improve their productivity and output and for their sustainable development. And currently we are receiving applications. I hope the AFCD can report on the funding allocation and application status. Chairman, on this, you have written at length on the documents on the number of applications and successful applications and for the funding commitment and so on. Some funding have been allocated to be on developing organic nutrient solutions. So after these solutions have been invented, will the formula be made to the public? Since they had government funding, so the formula is supposed to be made public. Well, simply put, they will have to be available to the public. The purpose of the SADF is to research for new technologies to benefit Hong Kong farmers. So therefore, the formula will be released. So for the vegetable management organization, that you have the Control Environment Hydroponic Research and Development Center. So we have allocated tens of millions into the center. So how well is it performing? So can you do we have any results for the VMO Hydroponic Center? So well, at first there are not too many people not too familiar with this method, and this center served as a demonstration. And now that Hong Kong, therefore the technology of control environment hydroponic research is pretty mature. So our demonstration role has somewhat diminished. Can we issue any report illustrating their results? So in the VMO annual report, do we mention the operations of the hydroponic center? If the members would like to get to the more details, I can supplement later. Why I'm asking this, while I visiting the hydroponic center, I saw some of the technology, for example, like ice vegetable. So usually this is quite rare in hydroponics, and I know this is rare in Hong Kong as well. Since it managed to cultivate it, I suppose the technology should be shared with other farmers. Next, Mr. Pun Shiu Peng. So back in 2016 policy address, it mentioned that they would implement the NAP. See, for the agri-park, the relevant government departments in Para 10 mentioned have held objection of resolving meetings with the green groups, landowners' representatives, and farms and local villages, and which the objections will be submitted to the Chief Executive in Council. My question is, what is the number of objections? And when will the Chief Executive in Council will make up his mind on the agri-park capital works? And for the SADF, on Para 18, and on the June of 2018, there are 28 general applications, which 3 of them have found to have failed to meet the eligibility criteria and have not been recommended. The remaining 19 are under processing. So what are the reasons they're being failed to meet the criteria? And for the remaining 19, when will they get notified the results? And for Para 11, on the hydroponics, and you mentioned that the hydroponics technology is getting more mature. And for the number of farms has grown in number. Now we have 39 hydroponics farms. which in industrial buildings. Well, the government offer concessionary measures to promote the hydroponics technologies and the development of this sector. Now that we have 8 hydroponics farms in industrial buildings, so what are the incentives to promote them? Would you assist the sales of the hydroponic crops? And thank you, Mr. Poon's question. For the different stakeholders, whether for the affected farmers and for the green groups, so all along in our consultation, they have been submitting their views to us, and after Gazetto, the AFCD have held quite a number of meetings to explain to respond to the questions. I personally met different persons to understand their concern. So AFCD can supplement where are the concerns. So the concerns cover a wide range of issues. For example, the proposed roads, impact to their daily farming or their accommodation, or in some cases, they would not understand or hope to have more communications on their progress. So the AFCD explained, and they also distribute some flyers to them. AFCD, 30 seconds. As for the roads and the objections, and for the 2018 to July 2018, the CEDD, the AFCD, and the North District Office and the consultancy have been communicating with the stakeholders, and which there are green groups and those from the sector attending. Next, Mr. Leung Yu-chung. So in the government document, he delivered the background of the agri park is to follow up on the 2016 policy address on modernization and sustainable development of local agriculture, and most of which set out on how to take forward the agricultural park. I believe that there should be a positive effect to the local agriculture, and modernization is necessary. We can't rely on cows to plow our fields anymore. For the local agricultural development, besides the issue of modernization, so we also have a land issue. As we all know, there are a streak of new developments would constitute a great threat to the farmers. So the land they used to farm on would be resumed for development purposes. So the farmers have no land to farm. So in this morning, we deal with the case in Hongshui-Q. There are a lot of farmers in Hongshui-Q still in active farming, and yet the government would relocate them to Pak Lai for them to resume their farming. And for them living in Hongshui-Q to go to Pak Lai, and the road to Pak Lai is rather narrow, would make transport difficult. So on a policy and measures, is there both of them in place to ensure that the land being farmed at the moment will not be affected by the clearance and development, or let's say the land must be resumed? Is there any way to identify alternative sites for farming rehabilitation, which is the next topics? So is any policy on a long-term agricultural development so that the farmers will not have to give up farming altogether? So this is somewhat related to the next item. So I will slightly extend these discussion on this item. So please make best use of the time. Secretary. So Mr. Leung has a point when setting up this NAP, the aim was to enhance the technology and set up a example. So for the phase 1 or phase 2 of the agri park, which the focus is on that, and the public may view that the park may be not that big in size if the technology as being up to shape and expanded. So another measure of the NAP, there will be the agricultural priority area.
In Hong Kong, we have about 700 hectares of active farming, and the agri park, as I said, will only measure 80 hectares. Therefore, agricultural development must be supported by the availability of a sufficient amount of agricultural land. Mr. Leung, you are correct. The establishment of the agri park, together with the APA's agricultural priority areas, will allow us to enhance the development of the industry so they can have value addedness and we can revitalize fallow farmland. In the next stage, we'll be developing APAs. As you said, we'll identify suitable land that can be used for farming. We will demarcate them so we can do better with sustainable development. Next, Mr. Adi Chu. Thank you, Chair. You know, I'm famous. Being a member of the opposition party, I always object to these large-scale projects, and always for good reasons. Secretary, I think the major direction of the agri-park should be supported because we are facing a new problem. Developers are hoarding land, and farmers have no farm or land to farm on, so you need to intervene. However, when you do so, are you going to bring about any reasonable results? This is something I'd like to debate with you, Secretary. With some Chilking villagers, I've held some discussion. They have formed some conclusions. They'd like to put forward 3 conditions for your consideration. Number 1, housing. Right now, your thinking is that you will build a road and then you will have phase 1, phase 2. Some of the land will be actively resumed by government for the building of the carriageway. But then you may be resuming the land indirectly. For example, you do not include certain houses in the boundary of the agri-park. But in fact, even if you don't include them, they are not the owners of the land, and the private landowner will think that there is potential for the land to be developed, so the farmers are driven out. But you have no responsibility to help these farmers. That happened in the north or northeast New Territories and also in Hong Shui Kiu. The same is going to happen to Chilking, and you have to think about it. Secondly, the entire agricultural industry. You seem to have forgotten that Chilking is an agricultural zone. After the Second World War, there has always been this tradition of farming. They live there, they farm there. They are developing and farming the land all these years. But now you want to impose a new way of doing it, and you are segregating farming from the agricultural villages. And talking about farming, it seems you're not matching things up. For example, flower growing and vegetable growing will be put into the same area. But in Hong Kong, not many people grow flowers. Some of them may, but this is a kind of logistics industry. When there is a major festival, flowers are imported into Hong Kong. So their need is wide carriageways. But for vegetable farmers, they may not need such wide carriageways. So what is farming in Hong Kong? I hope you will listen to the farmers. And please do not get consultants to tell you everything. They are not realistic in making their suggestions. Secondly, the road is a controversy, and I don't think it is necessary. In Chilking, the peak of their produce is served by footpaths. My concrete proposal is to avoid that controversy. You can shelve the carriageway for phase 1. I know that below the mountain there is a road that can be developed. And if you can try it out, say, for example, you can improve the road network without building a major carriageway, and if you can develop phase 1 like that, then you will get a win-win situation, and there will be no controversy. You can only get a written reply because there is no time. Kwok Wai Keung. Thank you, Chair. There is a new agriculture policy, and there is going to be the agri-park. Of course, we support those. But we support the direction. However, we'd like to seek an understanding into a few things. Number one, do you have other targets or indicators? I'm saying this because Hong Kong is a high-cost city in terms of land and manpower. But we always have to have our local produce. We may not be producing a lot, but at least it will afford another choice. And this will help with food supply stability. I'd like to ask you, what is the indicator for self-sufficiency in food supply? Do you have a certain percentage, for example, for food to be produced in Hong Kong? And so Hong Kong people can have a choice. Well, we are all gourmets. We are from Guangdong province, and we know what to eat in what season to eat them. So I hope there will be more produce for the public to choose. But do you have a view, or do you just want to build the agri-park so people can farm? But actually, that has something to do with the market. What is the market positioning for local produce? Thank you, Mr. Kwok. We want to build this agri-park so we can promote the development of farming in Hong Kong so that they become more competitive. And also, exactly because of what you are saying, we like to enhance the quality of local produce. We understand we have a scarce supply of land in Hong Kong. 90% of our food is imported. But we do hope that on the one hand, we can have the agri-park and the APAs. And also we have the SADF, which is $200 million in worth. So we can enhance the quality and quantity of our local produce. So we are looking at agriculture technology and new facilities. So the AFCD can help farmers modernize the industry, and so we can have better quality produce. And of course, we are also looking at quantity. But we are not talking about anywhere near self-sufficiency. However, we like to have high value addedness. That is the direction in which we are going, and this is actually the meaning of having the fund. Mr. Kwok. Well, I don't think we should talk about self-sufficiency. I don't think that's the right word to use. I'm talking about the percentage of local supply. 99% of our food is imported. That's a fact. That is why I'm asking you how we can increase the quality of the 1%. Perhaps the AFCD can add? Basically, we are not looking at quantity but quality. We are proactive in promoting the sales channel for local produce and also branding of local produce. Together with the VMO, we are looking into ways to brand local produce. You can supply more information in writing. Dr. Helena Wong, Chairman. I have a few questions. Number one, is there intention on the part of the administration to set an indicator for the percentage of local produce? In other words, by a certain time, we can increase the percentage of local supply. I understand we'll never be 100% self-sufficient, but at least you should have a target. And how much time are you going to use, and what is the percentage increase you're looking at? And then in para 11, you said you would look at the land to be resumed. You would look at the quality of the soil to see whether there is heavy metal presence. And I think that is very good, because if you produce food that cannot be eaten, that's going to be a waste. But you should be doing this quickly before you resume the land. It's a waste of effort if the land is already resumed and you find the land is heavily polluted. Have you done any tests on soil quality yet? 2 questions. Secretary, I'll answer the first question, and the AFCD can talk about soil quality. Dr. Wong, as we were saying, over 90% of our food is imported. We built the agri-park mainly to enhance the quality of local produce. We'd like to use high-tech to help farmers so they can produce quality produce. If we have more land, and if we can apply more technology, then perhaps we can have a greater output. But this is not something we can project at this stage. It also depends on whether farmers find the new measures palatable. And also we will have to see whether there will be more people who will be interested in farming. We'd like to see whether more people will join the trade. Therefore, we are not going to set any indicator for self-sufficiency. Why not? Are you afraid that you can't achieve it? Well, we need to be trying out all these as we go along. As the director was saying, we will be concentrating on quality. We'll be looking at new technology. We have the SADF, which will support the use of technology. And also, we need to help local farmers sell their products. They are growing, but Hong Kong people just may not know that Hong Kong produce is a good thing, and we are going to give them assistance. AFCD? I can answer the second question about soil quality. We have chosen a traditional farm slot. There is not a big contamination problem, therefore. But in the latter half of 2018, the consultant has started a study on soil quality. Depending on the results of the consultancy and looking at soil quality and other factors, the site would be divided up according to the mode of farming, like traditional farming, organic farming, so we can make the best use of the land in that area. Okay, let's pause for a while. We have this item until 3:30, 3:35. I still have 3 members, and some of them would like to have a second round. I'll draw a line there. But those who have not asked a question will have a second round, nevertheless. Even if you come back later, I will try to divide up the time for you to have a second round. Next, Mr. Oh Nok Hin. I don't have the mic. Yes, you have. Okay. I'd like to see whether I can ask 4 questions. Let's see how you do it. The administration said is going to build an agri park, but we do not know the rent level. And sometimes you set conditions, but they are very vague. For example, you take reference from the rental in farmland nearby. Well, we don't know anything about that, and farmers are worried that they may not be able to use the farmland there, and maybe only major enterprises can go in. So with what principles are you going to set the rent levels, and when will they be announced? I'll defer to the director. Please be very brief. He has 4 questions. Okay, briefly. If there are existing tenants and they come back to the agri park when it is set up, we will allow them to pay the existing rent. And the tenancy will be for 5 years.
So for the previous rent, they will continue to pay at agri park. If they're now farming within the agri park area and on the fixed rent on the land, we'll adopt the same conditions to let them continue farming for 5 years. If not, and just like the member said, that we'll have a mechanism with reference to the nearby farm rents. We also take reference just these 2 principles, right? We also we look at so we put in more facilities. What the comparison with nearby farmland? We don't want the rent in the agri park to be lower than the surrounding areas. So my second question would have to do with your answer. Now you just said that you will help the farmers affected by resumption to farm, that you have to mention and help them to upgrade the technology. So what kind of subsidies or assistance do we provide to the affected farmers? I'll let AFCD take the question. For the management mode of the agri park, the details are being hashed out. And now that the consultancy, one of the areas it will study into. So unlike the past practice that we only consult the stakeholders upon the consultant's recommendation. So during the gestation stage, we were already communicating with the stakeholders. And last week, we met with the advisory committee and the stakeholders to inspect the agri park. In August, there will be a meeting to solicit the views on the future operations of the agri park. So all along, we've been listening to the views, and we will collate them before deciding on the details. So you haven't decided on details yet. So once the details have been finalized, you can come to LegCo. And I believe that a lot of people are concerned on the rent determination mechanism. So right now I've heard only 2 principles. So with an actual mechanism in place, for those who are interested to farming, there will be of great help to them. Sorry, I only managed to squeeze 2 questions. You still get another chance. Next, Mr. Ray Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, is it last week we went to Kuchong and Long Valley to look at the farmers? So in the future, there will be fields in the Long Valley Nature Park, and the farmers have asked the question, so if they want to harvest, they will need to get to the farms by 4 to 5 in the morning. So how do we get there so early in the morning? So would they consider providing accommodation? The government had not provide a straight answer. So there may be some facilities for accommodation and storage, for just in case if we need to work early, so to allow them to make preparations. Since if it's only a family size of 3 or 4, to provide as actual accommodation instead of somewhere for them to stay for the night. Of course, we didn't get more concrete answers on that. And well, on on what the land lease conditions. I hope the Secretary won't shut the door on this and look into it. Like the Carrie Lam mentioned, or the Blue House mentioned project, they managed to preserve the building so it turned into exhibition space, and while allowing the residents, since it's been there for a long time. And for the Long Valley Leisure Park, the government will resume all the land. And the agri-park, another way will be an opt-out method. If the land is a landowner, it should be a problem. If it's a tenant, it's very likely that he will be evicted. The administration will then will claim it's a tenancy dispute and washed its hands off. So I just want to let the government know in advance. So for let's say if the farmer is a landowner, so you can take the opt-out policy. So if you've an investigation, if most of them are the tenants, well, the government can resume the land while allowing to build a accommodation or a small shed, so that they can able to live in the same area. Would the government consider that, Secretary? So I'll speak for a bit before passing it on to FCD, and thank for Mr. Chan's views. During our consultation, we've heard similar demands, and so they'll be concerned that if they need to get to work early, so how that gonna work out. So looking at the land use, well, we're looking into how at this stage, and there's still some planning and land use arrangements. So I can't give you a quick answer, yes or no. So we understand, and that's an area of concern that we'll examine that. FCD, anything to supplement? Nothing particular? If the Secretary promised to look into it, since you're talking about the new agricultural policy, so the policy direction will be to keep the farmers and the land. So I expect the solution to come up. So if the government had listened to the farmers' concern or demand, I hope that you can accept discretion and flexibility. Otherwise, if you drive out the original inhabitants, so it could turn to something different altogether. So I hope that this can be dealt with. Last one, well, it's supposed to be me, since I already draw the line. Since Dr. Cheng has just arrived, I only allow you to have the second round. So my turn. So I hope the administration can note that the current operating environment for agricultural sector is pretty bad. Well, back in the colonial days and the early stage of the SAR government had taken a live and let live approach, then make the agricultural land being scattered and lack of planning. For every time the major infrastructure or new town development, there's still few farmers can jump out to say no to relocation. So the government should have known the obligations. For under the new AP, also include the SADF, the agri-park, as well as the agriculture priority areas. On directions, on general directions, or we can agree and principle. On the details, the sector still have a lot of room for debate. I'll notice a lot of questions raised by members, which the government should clarify. Some mentions on the self-sufficient ratio. And secondly, after resuming the land agri-land, on the question on red levels. So if we don't resume the land or not turn it into agri-park, so does that mean the land issue can be resolved? If we don't resume the land is still privately owned. So we still have very short tenancy or sharp rent rises. So enforcing farmers to leave the sector. So this is a double-edged sword. So need to provide a long-term tenancy agreement on a stable rent so that it can inspire confidence to farmers to invest on the land. That's why the agri-park is so important. Well, 85 hectares is nowhere enough. So why the agri-park being talked about in the whole of Hong Kong? So the implementation progress have very slow, and the sites have not been identified. So so does that mean for the 80 hectares coming to 700 hectares, the public had no idea what's the government's direction? And on the self-sufficiency ratio, so Dr. Helen Wang mentioned that let's say do you have a target per se, but I want the whole of Hong Kong or our farmers know. So in raising the self-sufficiency and output shouldn't be a problem. The question hinges on whether we can sell it at a good price to sustain our livelihood. Let's say I'm harvesting 100 kilos of vegetable every day and sell $1,000. If we sell for harvest 500 kilograms, but still don't get the same $1,000. So how much vegetable should I actually grow? I have to tell the Hong Kong public, or even some farmers were thinking, please, will there be a raining and a bad harvest which drive up vegetable prices so that they would get fetch higher prices? Well, some of the farmers think that way. However, the rest of us would pray for good weather. To address the livelihood issue of farmers, that would decide whether the NAP will succeed or not. And for the SADF, on the effectiveness and the technologies, is it fully available to the public? I still have reservations. I haven't get the full picture. So for the research outcome of the farmers, which we rely to make a profit and make it to the public, so what income can they make? So I agree with the policy, since we are a technology at a low level, in terms of the protection of intellectual property, shouldn't we consider collectivization instead of individual farmers? That is the key. Another one, the issue of relocations. Will the government tell us that, how much money you pay for resuming well, how much it costs for building a new wall? So in terms of the government had lagged behind with 30 years in terms of resumption legislations. I ran out of time, so I'll let you to respond in my second round. And the other members who speak on the second round, we have 5 to 6 in total. And Chang, Eddie Chu, Dr. Helen Wang, Alok Hin, Chen Chung Tai, anyone else, and myself. So we have 10 minutes. So well, it's 2 for each. Then we definitely draw the line there. And Chang. So just now, members asked whether we can achieve self-sufficiency. For a lot of people in the public think it's not possible. We don't have that much land. If there were land available, it should be for housing. But fortunately, I've been making a lot of visits to the new agro-technology, the new types of farms. So with the new technology, not only self-sufficient would not be a problem, especially for veggies, to actually have surplus for export. With the latest technologies, for the they have like multi-stories building for cultivation. So let's say in the past you're able to have one story on the ground level. Now they're able to farm on a multi-story level. So with further computerization, let's say for 32 floors, B1 box, and able to growing lettuces, they have the equipment to harvest the lettuce. So my jaw literally dropped when I saw this. So under the government NAP, I think it's a good thing. First, we have to pick our brains first and open our mind. Under the NAP, besides encouraging farm rehabilitation, and mentioned for the phase 1 agri-park, you will consider priority to the current farmers. I know that a lot of young people are interested in farming as well. I hope that the Secretary can provide opportunities for the young people. A lot of questions and views, and these have been compiled into a motion. I will submit to you later. we should submit them as soon as possible for any motions. Next, Mr. Edit Chu. Let's see if we have time to deal with it. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on the question on roads. So I wonder if the Secretary is aware for the major vegetable growing area such as Hoc Chow, Ping Che, Ta Koo Leng, and Tai Kong Po or Long Valley and Shiu King. Most of the farmers are adept at using this existing pavement for logistics. For the VMO or the organic farmers, they're very used to rely on the pavement to transport the vegetables out.
When you build the agri-park, you seem to be going for the road first, and the farmers are baffled. Villagers also find it very controversial. What I like to do is to reduce the controversy. And so the agri-park will be applauded. The question is, you have chosen the site for phase 1, and the department can do site formation behind the mountain so as to provide some access. The question is whether you can put that carriageway aside. Please do not push for it, and then let us improve the existing footpath network. So phase 1 can follow the traditional transportation mode, and then we can get on to phase 2. Is there this possibility? 20 seconds. Secretary, Director. We are in the consultation period, and we have asked different stakeholders. Some people objected to the road, but in fact many farmers felt that transportation is important for the sustained development of farming. Next, Dr. Helena Wong. Chairman, I emphasize that the administration must set an indicator for the ratio of self-sufficiency, and you should seek to enhance the ratio. So you can work on the enhancement both in quality and quantity. I'd like to talk about para 8 of the paper. There will be 12 people, about 3 households who will be affected. And you said that those people who are already farming there will be given priority to rent land in the future agri-park. I'd like to ask about rental. Have you liaised with them? Are they willing to farm again in agri-park? And how will rent be set? Have they agreed to it, and can they afford it? Director, a technical issue. As I said, if they have a tenancy with the landowner and if they are farming actively, then when the agri-park is built, they can continue to operate for 5 years on the basis of the existing conditions. Therefore, in the 5 years from the time they move in, they can continue with the present rent. Therefore, there is no question of negotiating rent with them. And earlier, we promised that in phase 1, well, there will be some fallow land. We will rehabilitate it, so they have a place to move to before we'll resume the land that they are farming on. We have heard that aspiration, and we are going in that direction. And Chairman, para 10, it says there are opposing views, but we are not told which views those are. Can you let us know in writing? Okay, yes, we'll do that. Next, Mr. Au Not Hin. He's not here. Dr. Cheng Chung Tai. Thank you. I'm not a member of the panel. Thank you for allowing me to speak. First, many farmers are worried about the NAP, that you are just moving them around. Many people are questioning the use of technology. Say, for example, like in the Long Valley Eco area, this will happen in the agri-park as well. You will give people some land to farm on, but they will not be able to live like farmers anymore. Like in Long Valley, the AFCD told us that because in the LegCo area, no people should live there. There will not be any people living there according to the land lease. So they will be put into so-called hostels. I'd like to ask, when you set up the agri-park or the APA, will it be that because of restrictions in the land lease, you will not accept the accommodation of farmers at the same place? Secretary. First, I'd like to talk about the principle. We built the agri-park hoping to benefit the farmers, but as in any development, some nuisance may be caused in the process, and the major principle is to minimize the nuisance and also to try to take on board views of the farmers. The director can try to supplement. Well, in simple terms, staying for the night is important for farming, and we know that. That is why in the agri-park project, we will provide basic facilities for farmers to stay the night. But we must remember, we don't want any abuse, and we don't want living quarters to be put up there. Next one is my turn. I don't know whether Mr. Oh Nok Hin will return. A few members asked about facilities in the agri-park and also the road. We have had meetings with the administration and stakeholders. Some members of the public felt that they would like to keep the status quo. They wouldn't like any change. But when you modernize agriculture, is it that we should do nothing to the present infrastructure? Should we allow people to continue to use trolleys or very old-fashioned petrol-driven or electricity-driven carts so as to preserve the traditional flavor? Well, I don't think so. We have said to the administration, if there will be some more produce in the future, what about freezing facilities? Farmers are farming their own land. They are not really communicating. Can we have a focal point for them to communicate more among themselves so they can have more common developments? The administration, of course, was trying to not mention the word live, and they say staying for the night. Well, it's okay, whatever you call it, but the important thing is the principle of farming development is that you should put the land to the best use. So the farmers should also be given the right to stay near their farms. Right now, people are allowed to put up 400 square feet structures. But sometimes, these people are no longer farmers and they still live there. And then some people may come out to say, no demolition, no moving. And they are already farmers who are not farming the land anymore. Well, you have to be very clear about this, and you must provide guidelines. You must not allow any chaos to arise. I don't have a lot of time. I hope you will give me a detailed report. Mr. Oh Nok Hin is not here. Now we have to process Dr. Ann Chang's motion. She's not here. We have to process Dr. Ann Chang's motion, but I'd like to recommend this to Dr. Chang. If I were to process it now, I'll have to ring the bell for members to come back. Well, since your motion is well written, I'd like to say we just put this forward to the administration so they can give a reply. Well, you don't have to ring the bell. No, we don't have a quorum. We can't process your motion if there is not a quorum. We need 11 persons. Why don't you just ring the bell? Well, respect Dr. Chang. Do we have enough people? No. This is my recommendation to you. But there are people in the next room. Well, we can ring the bell. That's why I'm asking you. You just ring the bell if we don't have a quorum. And if still we do not have people, well, we'll have to abort the meeting if nobody comes back. If we don't have 1/3 of the membership, we'll have to abort the meeting. I'll give you 10 seconds to consider it. Let us just give the motion to the administration. Dr. Chang, would you agree? Please make a decision. I will follow up on your behalf. Secretary, please. Thank you, Dr. Chang. Thank you. There will be a written reply. It must be detailed because Dr. Chang has sacrificed the processing of her motion at the meeting. We'll go to the next item.
請官員啦。
Can we invite the administration to come in? This is about relocation of livestock farms and agricultural rehabilitation.
另外咧，香港農業聯合會同埋香港禽畜業聯會就住呢
We have received submissions from, well, it's a joint submission actually, from the Federation of Hong Kong Agricultural Associations and the Hong Kong Livestock Industry Association. And the Secretariat has prepared a background brief. When you are settled, please take us through the paper, Under Secretary.
好，唔該主席。
Thank you, Chairman. This is about relocation of livestock farms and agricultural rehabilitation. We are briefing members what has happened since 2004-2005 when we tackled the livestock licenses so that we have been able to limit the number of chicken farmers and the stock. When we amended the laws, we found that when poultry farmers moved, they were subject to huge constraints. We of course understand that we need to accord a lot of priority to livestock farming control because it has everything to do with public health, and we are doing many things to enhance the hygiene standards of the farms. For example, we have new avian flu vaccination, and also we have an entire plan to combat the growing threat of antimicrobial resistance, or AMR. But then when poultry farmers have to move and they are prevented from so doing because of stringent regulations, there will be some effect on our policy. Say, for example, if they want to update their biosecurity measures, and also when we want to take forward AMR, there will be a lot of restrictions. And also, poultry farms can be too close to residential developments, and if we do not provide enough flexibility so that they can move to a suitable place, residents may cry foul of the situation. That is why we have this paper today, to relax the regulations so poultry farms can be moved, and we are consulting members, and in due course we will embark on legislative amendments. Thank you. The administration is proposing to relax Cap 132L, and which is the public health, animals and birds licensing of livestock keeping regulation, so that they can be moved to livestock waste control areas. And there will be new biosecurity measures which are in para 14. And the administration has said that these will be relaxed so as to facilitate the moving of poultry farms, and they will be consulting stakeholders and farmers, and they will be proposing legislative amendments after the consultation is concluded. Two members are going to ask questions. 5 minutes. Mr. Au Nak Hin. Thank you, Chair. Please give me a moment. First, the special rehabilitation program of farmland. You announced it in 2013, but still we do not have a lot of information. And farmers are worried about their livelihood. It is said that when you announce the timetable, you will also announce the details. Can you have the timetable for the rehabilitation scheme so farmers will know when they will know the details? Director. Thank you for the question. Farmers may be affected by NDAs, and we are now proposing this agricultural land rehabilitation scheme. We are identifying government land and also private land that can be rented out. The NDAs are in Kutong North and Fanling North, and we will come back to LegCo early next year to apply for funding for advanced works. And the effect on farmland will be in the second half of next year. We are working on the details, and in due course, we'll let the affected people know.
So we come to LegCo in the early next year, and then the thing take you forward at the end of next year. Another question, I hope the administration can respond. So it has to do with the agri-park we just discussed. So the document mentioned that for the agriculture priority areas, to restore the fallow farmland to a long-term agricultural needs. However, the task force on land supply and have been promoting the private partnerships to develop the 1,000 hectares of farmland. So I see how they come along hands with each other. On one hand, you want to promote APA, that would take a few years. At the same time, you're having the big debate on land supply. So we only have 2 months left. For the study on the agriculture priority area, will that be on the active farmland owned by the farmer family on the government or the privately owned, or there were only the remaining land not chosen for the less defined land options development bureau? For the agricultural priority area that was led by the FHB, for the areas designated as green belt or agricultural zone to consider their agricultural potential. So the promotion of agricultural development, the task force land supply have discussed various options. They're not in conflict with each other. So I'll let the FHB to explain the or update the APA study progress. And Chairman, allow me to supplement. The Just Now Development Bureau had explained clearly that the two studies are conducted in parallel and with different objectives. For the APA, we don't have any preemptive stance. Like Mr. Au said, the government will look at the active and fellow farmland owned by the government or privately owned to see which are the appropriate for farming. So it depends on the infrastructure, for example, road networks, water and soil quality, and the surroundings. What is having a different focus from the task force on land supply? I see that the consultation seems to getting much less attention. So maybe my hypothesis is not realistic enough. Let's say I own a piece of land, maybe turning into agriculture use. However, in the big debate, and 2 months later, it may come to conclusion and develop the site. And for the consultation of the APA and the implementation much later than this, so the big debate on land supply may take priority over the APA. So let's say it's just let's say we only have the whatever left of the land supply big debate outcome will be designated as APA. So someone claims that these are all slim pickings. Would you agree? So we'll continue to scout for a bigger piece of farmland. So on public occasions, you have to expound the aims and intentions of the government, to especially to farmers. Now we have 4 farmers including myself. For anyone who comment later, I'm not able to give you 5 minutes. So, Mr. Edichi, 5 minutes. So, one question for the AFCD. So, I'm getting more and more confused. Since for the NENT, they are to be relocated to Chewking. If you still recall, the planning department back in 2013, they said they will be relocated to Chewking. And now you have this SALRS. Well, maybe it's just because the agri park cannot be commenced in time, so you have to come with something else. I recall that at Kempton, for the Kemshong Road, the rezoning of nearby land, I've asked you how you deal with the farmers affected, and it claims that the AFCD will have this agriculture rehabilitation scheme. So do you have different schemes at present? First question, can you cite some examples? Have the government evict a tenant due to public works, and you assist him to resume the farming elsewhere? Can you tell us the details of that episode and tell us what kind of difficulties faced by the farmer and how did you help to tackle them? So let me supplement some facts. And for the SALRS, that is to target the farmers affected by the NDA. And for the NENT Kutung North and Fanling North, they will apply for funding in the upper half, and the works will commence in the later half for the SALRS, since it's not happening yet. And the FCD has a long-standing farming rehabilitation scheme. So I heard a lot of talk on abstract policy. However, no one come up to me that this rehabilitation plan is very good and shouldn't be afraid of eviction. Well, eviction is a bad thing. Eviction is always a bad thing. Relocation may be better. Mr. Lam, so we want to have you here today because I want you to explain to us. For the SALRS is to tie with the NDA development. That means you haven't had before, you just want to. So it's not something entirely new. So the AFCD have this ALRS, Agricultural Land Rehabilitation Scheme, for any farmers who would like to resume farming. They can get land through matching by FCD. So let the FCD explain this running scheme. So for the ALRS, I definitely know about it already. This is not a government guaranteed scheme matching. It's have to connect the land owners with the tenants on the best effort basis. Now that for the farms affected by the government capital works, how do you utilize these LRS to make sure they have a smooth transition? I'm asking, do you have any success stories so that I'll have more confidence? A principal assistant secretary, you can't just shift the responsibility there. If you let the FCD mention that they only provide their figures, well, which would be bad for it. So Dr. Liu, Assistant Director, so I've already warned you that the answers you give is not helping yourself. 2 points to supplement. For this SALRS, will tie in with the NDA's development. So when planning for the NDA, we also identified some locations suitable for farmers' relocation, and then we will contact the landowners to see if they're willing to lease them out to farmers. So this is a scheme especially planned for NDAs, and like the development group PAS said, So they will commence in phases, and they will come with the details later. Chairman, this is not looking good. This is not a scheme that's been mentioned since 2013, and still we don't have any details. So you're evicting a farmer. How do you manage for his accommodation? And it's like there's no details, and it claims that you just started thinking about it. It's been 5 years. I really noted your comments, Dr. Helena Wang. I noticed that the licensed poultry farms, there are about 29 of them left. If some of them plan to surrender their license, then you don't plan to issue new license. So they could only at best maintain a current capacity. Of course, you have to take into account the risk of the measures on avian flu, so you take a strict approach on local poultry farms in terms of the biosecurity measures. I agree this is necessary. So for all the talk, they claims their policy that the live poultry trade in Hong Kong will be maintained. But if these farms are closing down, there will only be less and less of them. Wouldn't it be go against your policy objective? Secretary, so we told you many times that the poultry farms are closing down one by one. So the government policy was set back in the 2000s, we launched the various schemes to do the avian flu, whether for enhancing biosecurity or the relaxation of the relocation of poultry farms. These are the manifestation on the direction. What does that mean? That the size of the poultry farms will shrink, that without expanding the scope that will enhance the biosecurity measures. So the license themselves can be transferred. So you can transfer them, but you will not issue new ones. So if you surrender, there will be one less. If someone give up the license, will respect the wishes of the licensee. If they enter transfer or have someone to succeed the license, that will be allowed. On paragraph 15, since you care so much on the risk of avian flu, I will not attempt to create nuisance to nearby areas. For the Changsha provisional poultry wholesale market and the mainland, there will no supply export to living poultry to Hong Kong. Why didn't you relocate that poultry market? Mr. Wang, for the Changsha provisional wholesale market, and when the consultancy study undertaken last year by the government mentioned that we shall accept the recommendation to relocate it. Do you have any timetable for the relocation? We are looking at different options or locations. Of course, the consultancy mentioned Fuday Out and CEDD and the Qingyi Northwest. They're conducting feasibility study of relocating different wholesale markets to that, with the poultry wholesale markets included. When do we know? The consultancy study will take 2 years. So this study will take 2 years. So involve a lot of things. For example, involving different wholesale markets and the transport network. So and they had varying demands. So we have rough factors to be considered. I hope that you can take priority with the Changsha one because they have this different residential estates very close by, so it's surrounded by residences. So this wholesale market should be relocated as soon as possible. So nothing to supplement, urging you to expedite it. Dr. Wang, no more questions? No. Next, Dr. Kiki Kwok, 5 minutes. 2 questions. So I can see that the total licensing rearing capacity now is only 1.3 million and yet we don't have any local outbreak. Maybe you know more than us. That do you have any quality local poultry practitioners, or those who want to join the poultry trade? If the biosecurity is under control, we should consider this, since we're capable of doing that. To promote local agriculture or the fish trade, if you're able to contain biosecurity risk, for example, a live poultry supply, we shouldn't give it altogether.
So I think it's the appropriate time for UP to doing some review. As you said in the paper, apart from the voluntary surrender scheme, you, of course, are not issuing new licenses, but you can set a condition. You can say the lessee should be able to follow all the requirements of the AFCD, and they should have prior experience to show that this can be done. Can you consider that? Secondly, I am concerned about the Changshawan VMO. As you know, the administration is scrambling land in a frenzy. This is posing a potential risk to people nearby, and if the land is destined for public housing, I'm sure people in the waiting list who are waiting for 5 years or more will welcome it. I don't want you to delay the review anymore because we have been waiting for years. When can you do the review? Can you not take a broad brush approach and just relocate it away from residents and vacate the land for public housing to be built so people do not have to wait 5 years? As you know, it's bad enough for people to be waiting a month, and the short-term measures are not helping. 2 questions. Under Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Kwok. For the relocation of VMO in Changshawan, we have already set the direction. We said we'll be proactive in exploring it. But you are continuing with your reviews, and I don't know when that will end. You have taken 2 years, and then you're going to take 2 more years? Well, it's not the review direction, but we are looking in the details. But this is not the first time. What have you seen as changes in the factors for consideration? So you have to answer the question. It's not just the review, but have you met up with difficulties during the review? I think you have to tell the public that. The Undersecretary has put his finger on the main point. It's not whether we are going to do it or not, but whether the site is feasible and acceptable. It's an engineering point. It's not policy-wise whether we want to relocate it. When I answered Dr. Wong, I already explained that the administration has promised to look at different relocation options. And whether the site is feasible, we have to do feasibility studies. And we have to look at a series of measures like transportation network, sewage treatment, and the size of the site. We have to satisfy the needs of the industry, but we must also be using the land in an appropriate way. So we have to look at the overall feasibility. Is it that you will complete your review only in 2020? Well, this is what the CEDD is doing. We have commissioned a study, and I have to reiterate, it is not about whether we want to relocate, but whether the site is feasible. Can you not compress your timetable? It depends on what the CEDD has to consider in tackling these engineering points and whether there is any possibility for compression. You have 20 more seconds to answer the first question. As I said, we place a lot of store by avian flu risk, and policy-wise, we are not going to issue new licenses. Okay? No more questions? If not, it's my turn, and I'll give you a second round. Okay, no more people in the first round, so it's my turn. We have heard a lot of views, and for many years in the past, we have been talking to the SAR government about relocation. In para 8, you have listed the requirements to be met if poultry farms want to move, but in effect, you just can't find that kind of land in Hong Kong. When the Development Bureau is represented today, I'd like to ask you about the possible resumption of the land, and that is why we have this item today, because it is urgent. The Undersecretary is saying that you might need to amend the law. I don't know when will that happen, maybe next year or the year after next, and still the farmers have to find a suitable site to move to. Therefore, since the Development Bureau is here, I'd like to ask you, we have this major debate on land supply, and there will be some more major development projects, including Hong Shui Kiu, and to a certain extent, the poultry farming industry will be affected. But when you don't even have the policy, what are you going to do to relocate the farmers? Will you steer clear of possible land resumption so that people would not panic in this transitional period? PAS. Thank you, Chairman. Well, Fanning North and Kutong North will be the more urgent cases, and I said we have the special land rehabilitation program, and we are only going to affect farming there. And in Yuen Long, 5 poultry and pig farms will be affected, but they belong to stage 2 and beyond. We are still working on the timetable. In stage 1, we are going to house certain people first. And if now we relax the requirements, there will be more flexibility in siting the farms. I'm asking you the question today because you say this belongs to stage 2, but you also need funding for stage 1. When you apply for funding, people will ask you about the overall development blueprint, and because you are going to affect pig farmers and poultry farmers, and they will be speaking up, and that may have an impact on stage 1. Therefore, you have to come clean with your undertaking and a direction, and whether they can wait for legislative amendments to be passed, and so that you can have an alternative site so that you will relocate them afterwards. You know, I am your bridge in communicating with the industry. It is not that they won't make any concessions. You have to allow people to relocate so that they can continue with their livelihood. So first of all, they must be able to move, and secondly, to a certain extent, they must be able to stay the night, and number 3, whether they can afford the relocation fee, and number 4, the direction for sustainable development. If you can answer all these questions, I'm sure even if there will be opposition from the industry, it will not be as strong as it is now. So I hope you will consult the public. And then I'll come back to the FH Bureau. You mentioned when you answered a member about poultry farming license, you said that people can pass it to a direct relative. Well, this hinges upon sustainable development of the industry. It is not just the 29 chicken farms and their licenses. It is also about the 130 licenses for selling chilled chicken. And from time to time, I would visit temples to burn incense, to pray for longevity for the licensees. Why I am saying that is because if anything should happen to them, they cannot keep the licenses. I hope the SARG will adjust your licensing system and transfer system. You can draw a line and decide how many poultry farms and how big the supply level should be, and if in case a licensee doesn't operate the farm and his next generation doesn't operate any farm, at least the license should stay with the industry and stay for Hong Kong instead of just for that family. This is the same for fishing license in marine parks. You said it could only be passed to your spouse or your children. But the thing is, the fishing license in marine parks has dwindled in number from over 1,000 to just a few hundred. And this is bringing a downsizing of the entire industry. So, well, you don't have time now. I'll give you back the time. No more members in the first round. I have drawn the line there, and only Eddie Chu and myself would like to have a second round. Any more? If not, I'll give you 5 minutes for the second round. Eddie Chu. Thank you, Chair. I'll continue with my previous question. I'll make another attempt. Number 1, I hope the administration will give me a specific answer. Whether you are talking about anti-northeast and rehabilitation arrangements there, or like in Campton South, it is not an NDA, but it may be one in the future. I'd like to ask you whether this rehabilitation is for real. You mentioned government land, and it gives me the impression that you are showing some sincerity because government land is within your control. So this is the first question. Is it that it is going to be for real, that people can indeed resume farming? Secondly, talking about the Agri Park and the Long Valley Nature Park, well, this is something different from those. For Long Valley and Chilking, you are going to allow some facility for staying the night. As the chairman said, you can call it anything you like, but in Northeast and Yuen Long South, you have this new special agricultural land rehabilitation scheme, and in that you have not mentioned accommodation at all. And secondly, they have to move over. So what about the agricultural facilities? Number 3, they are going to be the trailblazers, and they will not be able to sell any produce anytime soon. So how can they tide over the trailblazing period? Have you thought about arrangements for them, or is it that you will just brush aside questions when people throw those questions at you? Number 3, recently we have a squatter reform proposal, which is with the FC for approval. It's quite strange. In the new territories, you want to develop land, and 3 types of people are going to be affected. First, the industries on brownfield sites, 2, squatter dwellers, and 3, farmers. The squatters will be rehoused without any means test, and they have a bigger compensation. And the warehouses or storage will receive more compensation, and you are looking at multi-story warehousing. The only group left is farmers. There will be no reform for them. I'd like to ask, why is it that the FHB and the AFCD have kept their silence on this one? Farmers are facing compulsory eviction, but they are not protected by you. The TH Bureau and the Development Bureau are thinking about other areas instead of farming. What can you say to the farmers? Undersecretary or PAS? I'll speak more on SALRS. Sorry, I'm not asking you to explain the scheme. I'm asking you for an assurance. Okay, about the measures. Our objective is to minimize the impact on farmers. We have taken another step, because normally we would only do matching when we have rehabilitation, but now we are proactively identifying government land and private land. This is a new measure. We haven't had it before. Sorry, Chairman. You are having a snapshot or freezing survey for squatters, and if they are eligible, they will be rehoused. But what about farmers? You say you are taking an extra step, but is it that as long as you are eligible, I will make sure that you can resume farming? I'm asking you whether there is assurance, yes or no. Mr. Eddie Chu is asking a very direct question. But of course, if you cannot assure anything, then you must have a mechanism to help them. Even with urban renewal, you cannot promise a house for a house, but at least you must give enough financial compensation, and the proposal must be accepted by both parties. And if there are people who are left out, how will you treat them? If they are not happy, they will protest here, and that is only normal. And this is an opportunity for you to answer the question. Mr. Chu, I'll give you back the time. As I said, we have identified land, but this is a new measure, and we have to thresh out the details with other bureaus. The AFCD will provide assistance and support to farmers. And under the SALRS and also at the Agri Park, there will be some farmland made available. Those who are affected by the government's land policy can resume farming in Agri Park. We hope we can minimize impact on the farmers.
Hi.
So when you come up with the plan, that there will be incurred new expenditure that had to do with the relocation to Agri Park, and we come to FC for funding. I don't have such information that if we have such requests that we have to go through the procedures. Okay, it's now my turn. If after me, and there's no more questions, I will allow members to make further representations. So the government has yet to answer part of my question. So let's divide into two parts. First part is for Development Bureau. So I always stress that for the freezing survey, for the farmer registration, there have been shortcomings when the government and to take forward certain development plans. So you haven't got the funding from LegCo, so these possible areas you're not able to do a freezing survey for this vacuum period, since some of the farmers have evicted. So after we get the funding to do the phase 1 works, those affected, let's say for the Agri Park phase 1, after you get the funding, then it will take effect, and those who are still farming, they would have the right to rehabilitate or offer financial compensation. For the development projects, it would take 45 years, is still in the deliberation stage, and for the meantime, all of the farmers have been evicted. So I always am asking the administration, is there a way to ensure, to a certain extent, let's say you would like to develop an area, but first you have to register the farmers. So you just leave to their own devices and let the landowner resume the land. And so can the government, do we have any way that when you announce the to register the farmers possibly affected? Speaking of compensation, I'm talking about the rights rather. Well, the rehabilitate to agricultural rehabilitation is a right. So before the SARS, the farmers affected will enter the ALR scheme, which the AFCD will provide support. I understand the AFCD, well, even though it's not a freezing survey, however, the department is familiar with the farmers' activity in the area. So how much right is the farmers entitled to? AFCD, how can you identify? Do you have any actual rights? Because if there's no status in the law, how can you seek claims from the government? Mr. Liu? On the new development areas, we have been registering the farmers, been monitoring their production. At this stage, the affected farms and the NDA that we had a grasp at. So in the meantime, if the government have yet to receive the funding, the plan have not been finalized, and the farms are evicted, what can you do? Now that before the Development Bureau have stopped their work, we have been carrying this work. So even subsequently, it will be evicted. We know that they have farmed there before. In future Agri Park, we will accord them priority to resume farming in Agri Park. So for the evicted farmers, and the government development plans have not yet been taken forward. So after it been implemented, would they be entitled for any? So would the evicted farmers be entitled to any relocation allowance? I'm asking a question on statutory right. Now you're telling me some softball measures. You say you will consider it according to your priority. However, maybe the 80 hectares may not be totally available. So is there any legal channels to seek claims for the government on as the government confer the right? So isn't that as like a loophole in the existing mechanism? The Development Bureau. So allow me to supplement PS. So when you're renting the private land for farming, the government can not in position to interfere with the tenancy arrangement between the two parties. Speaking of the right to compensation, one moment, Secretariat. PS, I think you mistook me. The tenancy agreement, of course, the landowners will have rights. If not that you announce in advance, then why would they terminate the tenancy? It's because of you that the farmer is being evicted. So I'm requesting you, when you announce the development in a certain area, you have to do the registration at the same time to protect the farmers' rights. I'm not asking that after being evicted, they can work as farmers. Now that you are shifting the responsibility to the landlords having the right to refuse to rent to farmers. PS, hope you understand that for the disturbance allowances and so on, would only offer market value compensation upon resumption by the government. So we have to wait for the government to resume the land before making compensation. So that's why we didn't have a freezing survey. Otherwise, we have additional barrier. They have to exist at the registration at the time of the resumption have to be there as well. There's actually an additional barrier to compensation. This is our arrangement. That's some supplement. I think those in a sector that, in terms of the system designed to achieve the consensus, we continue to adopt the current approach. In the future, not only agriculture sector, a lot of the parties will be affected. The government should seriously examine the existing mechanism as appropriate or not. Next, Mr. Wilson, or so I'm not able to give you 5 minutes. Let's say I try to give 5. Well, 5. When I was young, my mom taught me that you have to leave some room, wiggle room, and so not deprive people of their livelihood. So from the AFCD response, I'm simply baffled. Now you claim that you come with this rehabilitation scheme. So they'll be discussed for a few years. There's no freezing survey as the details on the compensation were as ambiguous. So what is the size for the future farm, and how is the tenancy, and what's the rent levels? I haven't heard anything on these. When hashing out this policy, first, have you been listening to the stakeholders? And second, can you divulge that how many farms have you registered? So I've heard that they've been registered, but how many of them? And thirdly, something specific. So what is the average size of the farms, and what's the tenancy period and the rent? And were there any effective measures in place to notify the stakeholders? I hope to get more information. Now that you're resuming land for development, the farmers will understand. However, you have to let them know that you care for them. Otherwise, your policies and your idea and the thoughts that wouldn't gel together. They're on separate ways. So I don't understand that how you work out the details in the future so that the stakeholders, especially those affected farmers, will have more information, and the rehabilitation will be much closer to their demands. PAS. So just now explained that for the SALRS, Besides identifying privately owned land willing to lease out the land, we also would identify suitable government lands. This is a new measure. Some of the details we need to work out with other bureaus and departments. However, in the process, we will communicate with stakeholders at appropriate junctures in order to minimize the impact. As for the status of the farmers and how much do we know, I wonder if AFCD can supplement that. AFCD? For the foreseeable NDAs that provided by the Development Bureau, that we pretty much had a good grasp of the agricultural activities in those areas concerned. For all this question asked, to only give you a very rough answer, I'm not satisfied. I hope that the government can thoroughly examine that today we come to this panel and coming to go through the motions or to really truly here to solicit our views. I can't feel the administration is serious about promoting agriculture. For the Development Bureau (PS), declines to proactively identify government land while dealing with the private side. So, for the follow-up, how much government land have you located? Can you disclose at this stage what are the specific additions? Thank you for Mr. Orr's question. For the NENT, in North District, let's say Kutong North, South, Ding Gong, we've checked out some government sites. This is a very tentative stage. We discuss government. Let's say there are 4 hectares or so, and I can't ascertain the exact number because there are requirements for farm rehabilitation, so our work is ongoing. So when can you implement or provide an update? A timetable, any? Let's say we plan to have apply funding in early next year, and at due course we will announce the details and communicate with stakeholders. I suggest the administration that you could submit a document on the timetable so that we have a paper to base on for our questions. Administration, Chairman, your proposal suits me exactly. And now that I just feel the whole thing is muddled, that officials present is not been explained clearly. So in this way, it's simply a waste of time. So for the remaining minute, can I urge the relevant policy bureau to help to implement the details instead of just coming to give us the empty talk. So we finished the last member's questioning. We shall almost move to the next item before the conclusion. So I missed out something. So you changing the policy on the relocation poultry farms is a positive thing. So I need to acknowledge the AFCD and HB. And on farm rehabilitation, there's 2 shortcomings. I hope you can examine that. Today we request for quite a number of documents. I hope the ministry can submit as soon as possible. Now as for AOB, there are no business under AOB. Should be the last meeting for the legislative session. Well, for the regular meeting, yes, in theory. If there are any special meetings, I will an email to you. And if any public hearings, I hope the administration would attend. You have to provide a complete set of documents. Thank you for your support throughout the year. Meeting adjourned.